Kia ora koutou. Hopefully, we are live on Facebook with Markus Zusak, who is now in the room after some stressy tech problems this morning. Markus, thank you so much for being here with us.
Oh, Louise, it's so good to talk to you, and also obviously euphoric after 18 minutes of sheer tech hell.
Yeah.
So I'm so happy to talk to you, and yeah, it's happy we finally got it sorted out, or I got myself sorted out.
Oh, just marvelous. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you. And of course, everybody knows you for Bridge of Clay, The Book Thief, The Messenger, the Wolf Boys trilogy. But we're here today to talk about Three Wild Dogs and the Truth, which is my copy that I had from the publisher before it was even alive in the world. So, um, can you just tell us a bit about this book? Because it's better if it comes from you than from me.
Oh yeah, it was. I'm not going to say it was a bit of a surprise to write it. It was one of those books that was always under my nose, so to speak. And it was more, people have been telling me for years that, oh, you got to write a book about your dogs, like, because we had such a. If there was another title for this book, it would be Love in the Time of Chaos. And I think it's best summed up by, I walk my, like, so we had two dogs together at the same time for quite a while, and they were like a two dog mafia. I sort of described them as gangsters, gunmen, soldiers, but and they sort of lived and frightened together. But they were also magnificent animals, and there was so much love amongst all of the beautiful, terrible, scary, amazing things that happened. And I don't have any regrets in that sense. In that, yeah, I have regrets, but not if it was to take them away from me. And
Yeah,
and the third wild dog of the story, he's the conduit to the other dogs. And to put that into perspective, we did get a third dog from the pound 3 months after we lost our second dog, and we thought we'd go 6 months. We thought we'd go and travel and do stuff like that, but obviously we were never going to do that. And so we got this. The way I describe it now is that I I have this dog. I walk him. His name's Frosty. He's a white, wiry third hound dog. And people go, "Oh, is he a rescue?" And I go, "Yeah, he's a rescue." And then they say, "Oh, was he abused?" And I say, "No, we think he was the abuser." And because he'd been returned to the pound a couple of times, and we understood why when we got him, and but um, there was no way we were ever going to send him back. So that's kind of been our life with dogs. We can't resist the underdogs, and I think ultimately we all love. We all love stories, but we don't get great stories unless our universe is disturbed in some way. And so I think we all seek chaos out a little bit in some
Yeah,
ways, because we know that's kind of what's going to test us, and that's where our best stories are.
totally. And in this one, you've said, I'm supposed to be a nice guy, but
Yeah.
this is the one about the truth, isn't it? So I've been selling this book in our shop with whatever your dog has done, these dogs have done worse. So this book will make you feel better about your dog. So did you agonize about how honest to be?
Oh, not really, to tell you the truth. To me, I really, um, I really like the idea that Um, I just like the idea that we all have this. We're all very skilled these days at having really good veneers.
Mm,
When people, and I think it is kind of due to social media, especially where. And I don't want to beat up social media. I think that's a bit predictable, but we're very good at showing our great dinners, our great children, our perfect dogs, our fantastic holidays, but we very rarely show all the arguments that produce that perfect shot in front of the Taj Mahal, or whatever or that happened in the restaurant or whatever. And so it really appealed to me to just tell the shocking truths of these dogs that probably in some ways, yes, shocking, but in others, when you really quantify these things, like, yeah, okay, so our dogs, at one point, they kill a possum in the park, and I know New Zealand's relationship to possums in a
Nobody
lot of
cares.
ways. Yeah. Well, and so, but there'll be people who go, "Oh, that's terrible. They killed a possum." But then there's someone else who'll say, "Well, that's just part of life." And so I like the idea that our dog, and I mean, it was still a big moment in my life. There was a great intensity as you're trying to pull your dog off, and then the next dog comes in, and and then you ring the park ranger at Centennial Park in Sydney, and you sort of say, "Oh, this dead possum in the park," and I think a fox might have got to it. You start making up all these,
Two wild dogs
all
and a
the,
lie.
yeah. So yeah, it's the capacity. They say we hurt the ones we love, but there's a darker secret than that, which is the lengths we will go to protect the ones we love. And so we brought our 3-day-old son home from the hospital, and our dog wanted to eat him, and so we just had we had so many moments where people, well, not so many, but we had, there were these great eras of really good discipline and so on, because we had these, it's a little bit like being an alcoholic or something, where you say, oh, I'm the owner of dangerous dogs. And so we just went through, this whole period where I was just going, let's just get these dogs through their lives without them seriously hurting somebody. But then you have the moment where your 4-year-old daughter is walking this big wolfish, wolfhound, cross German Shepherd, cross mongrel, cross mastiff, who makes noises like Chewbacca. And you'll say, "Oh, Reuben, Kitty's walking you now," and he would turn around and he'd go, "I've got it." And he would slow down his pace to match hers. And so when, so to sort of answer that question about, was I worried about telling the truth? I wasn't. I loved writing those parts the most. I loved, and then when people say, "Oh, when your dogs died, was that really hard to write?" And I said, no, those were the best bits, because, I mean, who doesn't want to live with that kind of intensity? Who doesn't want to have, sort of, we all want pleasant lives, but I think we also want heightened moments where we feel like we're alive greatly. And so I would go back to a heartbeat to driving down the Eastern Distributor in Sydney with my dying dog in the back and me screaming at him, "Don't you die, Reuben, you bastard." And him panting in the back, probably going, "Oh my God, I can't even die in peace."
You won't even let me die.
and this is where people really think, God, this is the ruthlessness of writers and storytellers, is I even love this moment in the story, which is when I sprinted with him through the doors of the emergency vet, the 24-hour vet.
Oh, yeah.
There was a big metal door frame. And of course, as I ran through those doors, I smashed his head into the metal door frame. And even that moment, I don't regret. I love that moment because it suited that dog. It suited his life. He was like a cyborg dog in a lot of ways, just with a dog with a dash of Terminator. And he was so tough. And I remember lying him down on the white table, and he was just this gristly, pound dog, part wolf, and it was like he was burning alive in a sea of white. And, that's a moment to me of great intensity and love. And I think back on it really affectionately. And it was like carrying in a trampled charioteer and going, right, save him. And I look at that as one of the best moments of my life in a lot of ways, even though it really hurt at the time. So I like that idea of, sort of there is great glory in tragedy as well.
Yeah, you've absolutely answered what was going to be my next question, which is, why do we do it? Why do we invite this chaos into our lives? And, you've made me cry. I've read your book, and you've also brought back to me the death of one of our dogs. But yeah, there is glory in there, absolutely. You did mention then they're rescue dogs, but you're not
Mhm.
into the bleeding heart. I am a with rescue dogs. So tell us about why they're from the group home, your dogs.
Well, it's so fun. I'm so glad you mentioned the group home because, when your big, bloody, wild or white pound dog is jumping on you, because he hasn't, obviously he didn't get out much before. He'd been returned a couple of times. And I would always say, if this dog jumps, steps on my foot one more time, I'm sending him back to the group home. And then straight away, you write that in a book. And that's exactly what I said at home, and probably with less swearing in the written pages. And and then I sort of go, oh, do I have to qualify that now? That are people going to think I don't care about people who are in that situation? And I just thought, if people if they're going to think that, then that's fine. They can judge me that way. Of course, that's not how I feel. But we're in our own homes. We just say things,
Yeah.
and so I wanted the book to be truthful in that way. And I think again, real love is often pretty rough around the edges. And we're not all walking around being so polite to each other all the time. It doesn't mean we've got bad hearts, and so I like to say, and I think it came from reading. I think it's in a David Sedaris book where it's like his diary entries, and he talks about rescue dogs and people with rescue dogs, and the owner will say, "Oh, he's a rescue," and yeah, and that's totally. I'm totally fine with that. Just the same way I'm totally fine with people who have cavoodles and and purebred dogs. I mean, the other thing too is you can get a cavoodle that turns out to be an absolute nightmare, or a purebred that turns out to be not what you thought it was going to be. I mean, I've known vicious border collies who've, like after, where people ended up getting, them put down, and you just sort of, and so there are all these complexities around all the dogs we have, and I just think, and I think we're all, I mean, I know personally, I think we're all getting a bit tired of judging each other too, where, it's sort of, you're just this thing of we're all just trying to get by, and we're trying to do the right thing. We're trying to, whether we take in a dog from the group home, or we get a purebred cavoodle because it's what will be the right thing for our kids or our aging parents or whatever. And I think we're all just trying to get by, and then whatever happens, chaos will always ensue. So, I think, in that sense, that's why I sort of just go, no, our dogs have come from the pound in the
Yeah.
sense of it kind of suits them, and it can't, but at the same time, you get a dog from the pound. We got Archer, our second dog, and to me, he was like when we got him, and he just had parvovirus, and he had survived that. He was all bare on his stomach, but he was such a beautiful and elegant looking dog. He was sort of like Marilyn Monroe, but on a downer. And
Oh.
and so he was like, it was
Morning
like,
after.
and but he became such a, and he was kind of the one we really had to watch because we think he did Ruben's bidding. Ruben was
Yeah.
like the mafia boss going, look, you get down there and don't come back unless you've ruffled a few feathers. And so I just but he became such a gentleman at the end. And when I described the two dogs and how they died, it was like Ruben was like a trampled charioteer, or after having a Johnny Cash-sized life, and then Archie just went so quickly. It was like the tide just picked him up and took him out to sea, and I think that was such a devastating blow, because I think our animals do become so much of our own identity too, so much so, and I know anyone listening and anyone who has a dog, and you as well, Louise, I'm sure you know so many people where you know the dog's name, but you don't know the human's name.
Yeah, absolutely. We
And
get
people
that a
don't,
lot.
yeah. And when we still had the two dogs and Ruben was dying, I would then just sometimes walk Archer when Ruben was having a bit of an off morning. And he was still, there's that, you're wrestling always with when is the time to take him to get put down, and but people would say, oh, where's your other dog? And then I'd say, oh, he's not doing well today. But then when you lose the second dog, no one says anything to you at all because you've become unrecognizable. So I
Yeah.
think, yeah, you do lose a part of yourself, and it is a bit of a gaping hole. But again, I drive down the street sometimes now. There's a certain part of road and sometimes I'll just think of Ruben or Archer, and I get a bit teary, and I think, how lucky am I to get to miss them?
Yeah,
You
that's a
know,
really good framing of that grief, actually. Yeah.
yeah, and even and I feel that way about people that I've lost as well. That it aches a lot to that you've lost them, but then you go, oh bloody hell, that was really good while it lasted, and
Yeah.
so and that's how I felt. And our animals, they don't leave us. They don't make bigger connections in the world. Only we love them.
Yeah.
Only we
Especially
could
ones like
forgive
you've
them.
had.
Absolutely. So yeah. But this I'm glad we got this all to work because now I'm getting all teary of it.
So am
I
I,
was,
I'm in bits.
yeah. But no, it's a pleasure to talk about them and to talk to you about them as well.
But the book is about writing as well, isn't it? Because while everything was going on with Reuben and Archer and then Frosty, that's when you're trying to write Bridge of Clay and it's not coming right. And so what was that like, sort of framing Bridge of Clay through the dogs?
Yeah, it was. I think some of the things I remember most was that every now and again my publisher came over to see how I was going. Once I'd sort of hit, I think this was in around 2011, and yeah, the book eventually came out in 2018. So I wasn't even verging on the end, even though I thought I should be. And I just remember she came over once and this massive dogfight broke out in my backyard. or just on the little bit, there's a side path around the side of the house. And she just looked at me and I had, I think my daughter was 5 years old. Noah, our son, was 1. We had these 2 wild dogs. It was sort of like, why did we take on the second dog? It just felt, well, we did because Archer, I was writing this book where the characters lived on Archer Street, and my mother-in-law brought this street dog in called Archer, and we went, this dog must be good luck. And
Yeah.
then as soon as you think that, it would be bad luck not to take him. And then as soon as we got him, nothing but bad shit started happening. So he cured me of all superstitions. But again, I don't regret how long it took me to write Bridge of Clay. I mean, every now and again, I turn around now and I go, I'm 49 years old. I started that book. I mean, that was the book I always wanted to write. And then The Book Thief sort of came as this huge surprise that it did so well. And then, but I sort of think, again, that's a good story that it took me that long. And Bridge of Clay is sort of my book for the true believers in my writing. I say it's not a book for weaklings. It's not. I think there's a lot of joy, and I think in a way it's really parallel to the idea of these dogs I had, and and young kids and dogs, and trying to write a book to follow up a book that was a surprise success. So there's a lot going on there, and again, I think it's such a more interesting story than, oh, a writer sits down and smashes the book out in a year and here's his next book. So I think the dogs were a really good parallel to how I was feeling. I was sort of caught amongst this wilderness of words that I couldn't quite corral, and dogs that were giving us grief, and then you've got all the chaos that comes with having young children as well. But I wouldn't change any of it, because I think if you start changing things, you're wishing your life away. And even though I turn around and go, God, that was a good 13 years of my life. I went from being still relatively young to being middle-aged, during a book. But at the same time, I say to people, it's a tougher book to read than The Book Thief or my other books, but it's not Ulysses either. It's finishable, and it's got a lot of, I think, joy and laughter in it. And actually, I've been really surprised by people come like on this, sort of going to bookshops and so on with this new book, where people have been saying to me, a lot more people than I thought have been saying, "Oh, Bridge of Clay, that's my book of yours." And so I think, sometimes you've got to give a book 5 years to really see how it's tracking. And probably the last thing I'd say is I kind of like the idea of going all in on a book, and I definitely went all in on Bridge of Clay, and I like the idea of betting everything, and you win some, you lose some, and some that you thought you lost, you might win later on. So no regrets. I think that's a good way to live.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bridge of Clay, to me, is the perfect novel. I've always said that every single word and everything that happens has to happen. It's amazing. Anyway, that's my
thank
feel
you.
moment
I
there.
mean, well, I'm glad you feel that way. I'm still sitting here going, "Oh God, should have cut 200 pages out of that bloody thing."
Perfect. We have a question here from Kelly, and I think you've probably answered it, but do you have dogs now? We had to get my rescue dog put down 5 years ago, and she hasn't been in the right frame of mind to get another.
Yeah, I think I know people who I think I love that question, because we do have one, and it is our dog Frosty, or a whole cavalcade of nicknames that they're not all complimentary. But we ended up
I think was my favourite one.
You went straight to the one that I was thinking of. In the original text, that was even in italics, and my editor said, "Why is that one in italics?" Because I was like, "Because that's how we say it." It's never in a good way. But I would say to Kelly that it's funny that I know people who they'll have a dog put down or a dog die, and they, like, 2 days later they've got a new dog, because that's how they and that's how they respond. And then there are people who it takes 10 years. I know one guy in the park who I've come across. He said, ultimately, to be honest, he said, I had to get another dog because I put on about 15 kilos. and that's where I say they're the best personal trainers in the world. And so I think, everyone knows when the time is right again. And so if it's been 5 years, it might be 6 years, 7 years, it might be never, just so that you've got that memory to treasure. So I wish you all the best, no matter what you decide. But I think even the gnarly times we had with Frosty in the first 3 months, where he was just attacking us on the street, because every time he saw another dog, we were in the way. And that gave me the beginning of the book, where I just had to have it out with him on the street. And so you never know what you're going to get, but at the same, and I think getting a new dog, or I'll use that as the example, but it's like learning a new language. And because you think, because you've had dogs before, you'll know what to do this time, and you've got a lot of tools that you didn't have originally. But it is a bit like going, "Oh God, this is a whole new basket case I have to wrangle." Or you might be lucky, and this one is just a total sweetheart, and it's easy. So but I wish you luck, Kelly. Either whatever you get, or if nothing at all, you'll know when the time's right.
You do say that walking Frosty is like walking a rolling thunderstorm, which is just the most amazing expression. Do these things just come to you? Do you think all the time?
I think this is a really good writing question, in terms of, I don't get those ideas when I'm out walking, or even when that's happening. I just get those ideas when I'm sitting down working, and you do the hard bit of the first 5, 10, 20 minutes where you're still feeling a bit cold, and then you hit a point where it's been work. And I describe it a bit like, it's like you're climbing a mountain, but there's a sand pit at the top where you get to play. But you've kind of got to climb the mountain first. You do the hard scrap, and no matter how long that takes. And so my favourite line from a book is from Michael Chabon's book, The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, which if you don't remember the title, if people are listening, if you don't remember, just look at Pulitzer Prize winners, because it won probably in 2003 or 4 or something around that time. And there's a line in that book where he describes a big ocean liner coming into New York, and he says, "The Rotterdam came into New York Harbor like a mountain wearing a dinner jacket." And I think it's such a great expression. And to me, that's a writer who's sitting in the sandpit playing, just playing with the words. And it's also what I say to people about being a writer is not about necessarily being a huge mind or a huge intellect. I don't have a necessarily big intellect. Most neighbours that I've ever had have said, I've met you and I've talked to you, and you don't actually seem that bright. And I reckon if you can write a book, I can write a book. So then they've sat down and started, and then they go, "Yeah, I wrote one sentence and I had nothing." And so for me, it's like I don't have a huge pool of words, even like a great vocabulary. I mean, probably not too bad, but I'm not using words all the time like acquiesce and things like that. But my idea is that even something like rolling thunderstorm, as you walk your dog, they're both quite standard words, rolling and thunderstorm. But it's what happens when you put them together with the idea of walking a dog. So to me, it's all about the combinations of words, and what you do with a small pool of words can take you a long way, because actually the combinations are endless with how you can describe something. So that's even in a case like that, So that was another one where I wrestled as well, where I also say it's like he's like ADHD on legs. And I thought, is that going to be offensive to people? And I asked editors and so on, and they said, you know what, just leave it in. No one's died from being offended. So yeah, but that's kind of gives it a bit of an insight into all the little decisions that you're making. First, when you write the book, then when you edit it, and then finally you put the book out.
Yeah. And the book is out. It's well and truly out in the world, and congratulations. And you are currently mid-tour, aren't you? So
yeah,
again.
Sorry. So yeah, I'm in Tasmania and just at the moment, but I'm going home today. And yeah, but it's always nice to be out. And the hardest part is always, those moments where you kind of you're not at home, you're in your and I am a real homebody, but it's so nice to meet readers and just like and also like even something like this, talking to you, and I can see your books behind you on the bookshelf, and I just feel like independent bookshops are like one of the last bastions of civilization. And so
yes,
yeah, I get to meet people who still love books and love and I think humans are built to love stories, but for me it was like to become a writer. What made me want to be a writer was reading fiction and believing it when I was inside it. And I feel like I love movies because I get to see the characters, but I love books because I feel like I get to become the characters when I'm inside. And to me, I remember just having that moment as a teenager and going, this is all just made up, what I'm reading, but I'm believing it. And I wanted to I wanted to be able to master those mystical truths. And so I love that idea that it's black words on a white page, but we get to see it in colour. And then to be out and to go into local bookstores, like I was at Fuller's bookshop here in Hobart last night, and just to talk to people who love reading and love books, and people who share the same addiction. It's just such a pleasure. And so I'm so grateful to people who still love books and support independent bookshops.
Yeah, me too. No, there's plenty of us out here. So I know you've got a plane to catch, so I'll let you on.
Yeah, no, that's someone just came into the room actually. But it's sort of like, could I be any more? Because of course I didn't put a thing on the door. So, but no, thank you so much for having me, Louise, and you too, Gareth. And And to everyone who's been a part of it, I'm sorry I was late. And like I said, and I mean it, I definitely owe you a favour or two.
We're going to hold you to that.
So yeah, please do.
Well, thank you so much for the love and the grief and the chaos and the amazingness of Three Wild Dogs and the Truth. Markus Zusak, we will let you go and catch your plane.
Oh, no, Louise, and I hope to meet in person. Absolutely.
Me too. Cheers,
Okay.
mate.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.